Welcome to the Community Policy Institute advocacy meeting. So we're going to go through our normal kind of welcome where we just explain, what CPI is, who can get involved and how to get involved, and then we'll move into the fact sheet presentation tonight by Marque Hall, which is focused on voting rights for previously incarcerated individuals. And then we'll probably have like a Q&A, a discussion, questions that people have as we go through the presentation. And then we can talk about some ways for people to volunteer, to sign up for fact sheets, and also to get more involved and specifically help for the issue of voting rights as well. All right, so the Community Policy Institute works to connect community-driven efforts to in-depth and rigorous policy research and development. We aim to serve as a research and legislation resource for policymakers, community members, elected officials, and advocacy organizations. We focus on analyzing issues through the lens of economic and racial justice. We believe when we uplift key ideas and opportunities, we can continue to improve our state. We want to create a coalition of committed volunteers to research social issues and write policy fact sheets, which can then be used by issue campaigns and individuals when advocating for different policies in the community or in government. We also want to share skills often reserved for academia because in our current system, not everyone has access to higher education, but everyone should have access to research and writing skills, and that's something that can be achieved through community education. So what does CPI do? We create policy fact sheets by preparing regular people to be effective researchers. Through this work, we support the Building People Power issue campaigns and individuals interested in advocating for different policy priorities. We make fact sheets on a bunch of different policy areas: housing, health, education, criminal justice, economic justice, and much more. So who can be involved? Who can participate? And the answer is anyone. Anyone that has an interest in policy. That's really the only thing that it requires. We specifically need more researchers and writers, also editors, and people who are interested in creating graphics as well. So if any of these roles sound interesting to you, you can let us know in the chat. But also you can email us. And if Haley, you wouldn't mind putting the email in the chat, I would appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so CPI, which is the short for the Community Policy Institute, we meet on the first and third Tuesday of each month. The first meeting of each month, including tonight's meeting, we focus on the work being done by issue campaigns or other groups in the community. During these meetings, we hope to have volunteers like you who have been working on fact sheets to present your findings to the larger CPI team. The goal for these meetings is to help educate each other on the issues and to share direct action that can be taken to support the policy or policies discussed. Tonight's presentation will focus on voting rights for previously incarcerated individuals. CPI volunteer Marque Hall will present on this important issue. So I'm now going to hand it off to Dee to get us started.
So I want to thank everybody for being here. First and foremost, thank you guys for caring about this issue. When we say previously incarcerated people, we're not just talking about previously incarcerated people. We're talking about people that are incarcerated now. We're talking about disenfranchised people that don't have the right to vote. I'm a registrar, so I can get people registered to vote. I'm allowed to do that since I went through the training. If we can zoom in on that, we see Anthony Albence, the commissioner. He was supposed to be here. He said he was going to be a little bit late, but the elections commissioner here in Delaware is Anthony Albence, and I've shared this presentation with him, and it's just really unfair still that so many people aren't registered to vote who were convicted of felonies that now can get registered but still don't know that they can. So we have to share this information. Next slide, please, Haley. So our
Okay.
community's real big, and it's getting even bigger. Kylie's actually in Ireland right now. So we're global, guys. We're global right now. And Dave Beaver at the Delaware Center for Justice is here. I saw Len was here in the chat. I'm thankful for all these great people that are doing the work that needs to be done always. And you know, my community also includes the whole third district NPC. John Dennis is here, Dr. Philemon's here. I'm thankful for all of my community. Thankful for going back, my ancestors from Africa, Central and Western Africa, Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Cameroon, Congo, all these different folks. My community also includes people that have been convicted of felonies, people that are locked up right now. That is my community. Next slide, please, Haley. So many people in the third district, when I was going and getting folks registered to vote and letting people know that I was running, was telling me that they can't vote. They said that they're felons. I said, you can vote. You know, there's 3 different things that would stop you from being able to vote. If you didn't do one of those 3 major things, you can vote. But they didn't know because it's only been since 2016 that you could vote. I want to allow for everybody to speak. Like, if we could come off of mute real quick, can I just hear a couple things? Can people tell me what comes to mind when they think about the word felon? If you could come off of mute and just be honest real quick. Like one word, what comes to mind when you think about the word felon?
Scarlet letter.
Scarlet letter.
Serious.
Dangerous.
Second chances.
All right. Second chances. I like that one. Kylie, next slide, please. So this is a picture from a coloring book that I did. I'm an artist. The cover is a picture of a lot of different revolutionaries. Betty Shabazz, her husband, Malcolm X, Coretta Scott King, her husband, Martin Luther King Jr. His hands in prayer. You know, we're still fighting for a lot of the same things that he was fighting for. And it's even worse now because there's a lot more people locked up than there were back in 1960. Before Dr. King was assassinated, in some ways, we were better than we are now. But if you're a resident here in Delaware, if you're of voting age, if you're 18, if you are registered to vote, if you're conscious enough to do it, there's some people that are conscious, but they're still not doing it. They're still not going and voting. They're not stupid people. They're smart people. They just don't think that it matters. So they're not willing to go and get voted. They're not willing to go and get registered and going and voting. But we have to change that. We have to make the disenchanted somehow care a little bit more and become registered and actually go and vote. Same things Dr. King was talking about when he was alive. Same things we're fighting for still. Hey, Kylie, next slide, please. Next. So we have to get educated to why it is important. We have to become aware of the legislation that's already passed. Since 2016, people with felonies in Delaware could vote. And we have a lot more that we have to get activated about doing. We have a lot more policy that needs to get passed. We have a lot more things that could be written, same day voter registration. And we're going to get to some of these things that we need to do in these next couple slides. Kylie?
Hey Dee, I see a question from Dr. Philmon in the chat. She said, why? I don't know if she can come off mute and just
Right,
elaborate.
he just said that we were going to get to that, so I can wait.
Oh, okay, got it. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Philemon. I like the fact that we're engaged, that we know what's going on. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. In 2016, over 6 million Americans were unable to vote. This disproportionately affects Black Americans. 1 in every 13 Black Americans 1 in every 56 non-Black Americans is disenfranchised. That's a big disparity. 1 in every 13 Black people, 1 in every 56 non-Black people. In 2013, in Delaware, we passed legislation removing the 5-year waiting period, but the requirement of sentence and supervision remained, restricting the rights of thousands. In 2016, Delaware passed legislation removing the requirement that fines and fees be paid off before becoming eligible to vote. Next, please. Kylie, thank you. According to the Delaware State of Elections website, a person convicted of a felony may register and vote if the individual meets the conditions below. They've been fully discharged of his or her sentence and was not convicted of a disqualifying felony as stated in the state's constitution. These felonies are murder or manslaughter, except vehicular homicide, any felony constituting an offense against public administration involving bribery or improper influence of abuse of office or any other offense under the laws of any state or local jurisdiction or of the United States or the District of Columbia, or any felony constituting a sexual offense or any like offense under the laws of any state or local jurisdiction or of the United States or of the District of Columbia. So murder, rape, molestation, or abusing public office, bribery in office. This last part is important. Payment of any fees, fines, cost, or restitution which a felony offender may be required to pay as part of the criminal sanctions imposed on such offender is not considered in determining discharge of sentence for purposes of eligibility to register to vote. Now that's really confusing. That wording is really tough for people. And when I went over this presentation with Anthony Albans and the other elections officials, we talked about that, and we need that change. It's really litigious, and it's not something that you can really understand if you're just a layman like me. Next slide, please, Haley. And it's a barrier. When we don't have these things changed, when it isn't easy to figure out, it's tough, and people don't think that they can. This is a map that we made to make it a little bit easier for folks to know whether or not they could vote in Delaware, because these qualifications are just confusing to people. Do you meet these qualifications? You're a U.S. citizen. You're a resident of Delaware. You're at least 18 years old. If not, you can't vote. If you are, have you been convicted of a felony? If not, you definitely can vote. If you have been convicted of a felony, have you finished your sentence, including probation or parole? If not, you can't vote. Was the felony one of the below if you have finished your sentence? Manslaughter, murder, bribery, abusing the power of public office, a sexual offense? If so, have you been pardoned? If you were pardoned by the governor and his board, you can register to vote. If not, you can't. You can't if you've done any of those things and you haven't been pardoned. Okay, next slide, please, Kyle. So this is a man who was invited to this meeting. I hope that he's here. I don't know everybody that's in the chat right now, everybody that's on, but Don Jackson, we got registered to vote with one of our online voter registrations, and Don Jackson was convicted of a felony. He was locked up. He served his time. Before he served time in jail, he served in the Navy for many years, and he got in trouble for actually telling somebody where to go and get drugs. Don Jackson's grandchildren who live with them, one of them is friends with the son of a woman from my church, Camelia Matthews. And when she found out that I was getting people registered to vote and I was running for office, she knew that I was getting people with felonies registered to vote, and she didn't know that felons could vote. So once she found that out, she linked me with Don Jackson, and we got him registered online. There's a lot more Don Jacksons out there, though. You know, this man served his country, And all this time, he didn't think that he could vote. We got him registered after the election. We kept the online voter registrations going after the election. So 2020 wasn't his first election he could vote in, but this year, 2022, will be the first election that he votes in since he was charged with his felony. Next slide, please, Kylie. We've got a lot more work to do. Thanks, Kylie. This graph, it shows how many people have been locked up since 1960. This map shows the incline in the 80s and the 90s, the 2000s even. Things are getting a little bit better, and that trend to continue. And we want for more people to be registered to vote. We want more people voting. We want more people to be involved. 40% of people incarcerated are Black. 1 out of every 4 Delawareans is Black. 3 out of every 4 former felons is Black. Since 1978, the Black incarceration rate has increased 104%. In 2017, Black people were incarcerated at 4.1 times the rate of whites. Next slide, please, Kylie. It sounds astonishing to the majority of us, but just because you're incarcerated does not mean you forfeit all of your rights and privileges. Many incarcerated individuals believe that they can't vote if they've been convicted, even after they have served their time. I believe that voting is a human right because what's on the ballot are human rights. Health is a human right. Housing is a human right. The people that we elect should care about these issues. So everyone should be allowed to vote because it's a human right. This changed in 2016, but many don't realize it. Many people were given the ability to vote in 2016 because of legislation that was passed, because the right people were voted for and the right people went to work. But so many people still don't know because it's not advertised to people. You don't get a pamphlet when you get out of jail. It's not taught to people. In Maine, Vermont, and Washington, D.C., people that are locked up in jail can vote. What do you guys think about ballots in our state-run DOC facilities? Because they're all state-run. What do you guys think about ballots in our state-run DOC facilities? Come off mute real quick. I want to hear if you guys think that it would be okay or not. Does anyone think it would be okay to allow people that are locked up to vote?
I think it's okay, but I think they need to be aware, they need to be made aware of
Yep.
their rights. And after that, I feel like it's absolutely imperative. Is this many people that you're saying is 1 in every 4? What did you say? What was your statistic? Something about 1 in every 4 African Americans is incarcerated?
Yes.
That's crazy. That's a lot of people.
Disenfranchised. So when I say disenfranchised, I mean incarcerated felons, people that are on probation, people that are home, people that are disenfranchised that can't vote. It's really astronomical. I'm not like a statistics person. I'm not a numbers person. We compiled all these statistics by doing research online, and we're sharing them. You know, there's a lot better that we can do in the future. This information is going to be shared with more people, and I definitely am with you when it comes to people that, like me, you know, were locked up, got newspapers, you know, I watched TV, I knew what was going on, I was aware of what was happening. 2008, when Obama won, I was in the hole. That would have been the first election I could have voted on, but I was in the hole, so I couldn't vote because I was locked up, and that right isn't given to people in Delaware. And in 2008, it was the same. Next slide, please, Kylie.
I just wanted to say, because I got a call in between, I couldn't respond at the time. I think it is a good, for people to vote while they're in prison because it engages them, and hopefully, maybe they have more time to get educated about some issues that when they get out, maybe they'd feel more likely to want to get involved or change something. I don't know.
You have a lot of time to be concerned about everything. You have a lot of time to be passionate about a lot. You have more time to think. And I think that everybody should have the right to vote. You know, it doesn't matter what your sexual preference is. It doesn't matter what your abilities are, what they aren't, what you can do, what you can't do physically. Doesn't matter what you can't do, what you can do, maybe emotionally, behavioral problems that you might have. If you're male or female, if you are illiterate, if you haven't gone to college, if you are homeless, even, you can vote. You don't have to have an address to actually vote. You can vote with a friendship house address or a shelter address or family. But if you're a felon in most states, or if you're locked up, you can't vote. And those people include mostly Black people, mostly low income people, men, women, transsexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, disabled, veterans, civilians, Americans. Next slide, please, Kylie. Thank you. So these policy solutions come from the Delaware Working Families Party. Eliminate permanent voter disenfranchisement for disqualifying felonies. We went through those. Eliminate those barriers. Restore voting rights to all. To eliminate confusion, including those who are incarcerated via vote by mail system. Engagement with the criminal justice system should not disqualify Delaware voters. If this must be done, incrementally tiered measures could restore voting rights to citizens on probation or parole by removing the requirement of completion of sentence and supervision. That's probation and parole. Expand automatic voter registration to include those who become eligible to vote upon completion of probation and parole through Department of Corrections. Require the state to inform all eligible voters of their right to vote. Automatic voter registration. I need you to go back, Kyle. I'm sorry. Automatic voter, it's all right. Automatic voter registration and no excuse absentee ballots. Delawareans should be registered to vote whether they conduct a transaction at the DMV or not. Allowing automatic voter registration will expand access and voters' ability to enact meaningful change. Absentee ballots will also allow marginalized and historically disenfranchised communities to vote when barriers, polling place location, and limited hours still exist. We don't want those barriers to still exist. We want both, and we want to be able to make sure that all of our polling places are safe and accessible, and we want all people to be able to vote at the same time. And we want to allow same-day voter registration, even if citizens are new voters. They should be permitted to freely exercise their right to vote immediately. Next slide, please, Kylie. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the necessary allowance of no excuse absentee voting, allowing voters to safely and conveniently cast their ballots. Other things that can be done to reenfranchise previously incarcerated citizens, ensuring access to absentee ballots and voting by mail, allowing same-day voter registration, automatic registration, and education about the rights of citizens and leaving the criminal justice system. SB 5 does not include automatic registration for reinstating, eliminating disqualifying felonies. Delaware's felon voting laws have been updated several times in the past decade, but many citizens are unaware that the laws have changed and that they are now eligible to vote. And that's why we have such a low turnout of people that have been disenfranchised. Next slide, please, Kylie. So willing. Remember on that slide with Dr. King, with the art that I did, Dr. King and his wife, I said, you have to be willing, even if you're conscious and you can get registered at the DMV. Some people still aren't willing. They don't think that it's important. They don't think that it matters. Banning people with felony convictions from voting significantly limits the number of African Americans who can vote. According to the Census Project, 1.4 million African American men, 13% of Black men are disenfranchised, a rate of 7 times the national average. Over the
Hey,
last few
Gabe.
years, advocates of, yes, ma'am.
I see that there's a hand raised. I don't know if you want to address it now.
Let me finish this slide and I will. Who is it?
It's, I'm not exactly sure how to say your name. I'm so sorry if I get it wrong. Jane?
You said Jane or John? If it's Jane, I'm gonna let her speak now. If
It's
John, you're gonna-
Jaehn, but it's
Oh,
the third
John.
district.
John Dennis, how can I help you? What can we answer for you? Something wrong with his mic. We
Yeah, we can't hear
Mr.
you,
Dennis.
John.
I think it's pronounced Jan Dennis,
Okay,
but we can't understand you because there's some kind of robot or something messing with your mic. Over the last few years, advocates of felon voting rights have helped to successfully dismantle some laws, but the fight continues and millions of citizens every election are unable to vote because they have a felony conviction on their record. I think maybe if you tried to go out and come back in, Mr. Dennis, it might be better. We might be able to understand. I've never heard that before. I've been on like so many Zoom calls and I've never had that happen before.
I've never
It's
heard
like a
that either.
chipmunk or something. It's like a chipmunk. Melvin.
Yeah, I've heard it before, but I don't know what people have done to
Why?
fix it. If they've like left and come back, or if there was something wrong with their mic, I'm not sure.
I always try to solve problems with the most simple solution first. Like if some kind of technical problem, I would turn it off, turn it back on.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Okay, Holly. Legislation. So House Bill 25, same-day registration. This was introduced by Sherry Dorsey Walker, follows documentation requirements of mail-in registration. It allows for same-day registration. That's what we want. That's what we need. And we're thankful to people like Sherry Dorsey Walker who write this kind of legislation. House Bill 225, paid time off to vote, Eric Morrison's bill. This bill is now House Bill 288, and it needs to be passed. Paid time off to vote. You know, some of the people that are against it, they'll say, well, you can mail in your ballot, but everybody can't mail in. There's no reason that everybody shouldn't be able to mail in though. So that's another problem. House Bill 75, no excuse absentee voting by mail. This is pending. This act is the final leg of a constitutional amendment that would eliminate from the Delaware Constitution the limitations as to when an individual may vote by absentee ballot. This amendment to the Delaware Constitution provides that the General Assembly shall enact general laws providing the circumstances, rules, and procedures for absentee voting. Next slide, please, Kylie. Does anyone else have any questions besides Mr. Dennis? Or Mr. Dennis, if we figured everything out?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I hear you fine.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, yeah, I had something else on. Okay, yeah, I'm a registrar as well, and have been for quite a few years. When people really need to be educated, because when they go to a motor vehicle and they don't register, and when they do register, they are normally put into an independent status if they don't know what party affiliation that they want to be on. Okay, so when they go to register, they need to be educated and understand the party, even though you can't tell them what party to vote for or what to be, independent or Republican or Democrat. But they need to know that the motor vehicle generally, when they don't know what they are, they put them in an independent status, and they cannot vote in the primaries as an independent. I'm sure you are aware of that.
That's very important.
Yeah, it is very important because
everybody doesn't know that. And
yeah,
some people end up going to the primary
right,
and are not allowed to vote. We had a young lady that helped with my campaign. She was wearing her t-shirt on election day, primary day, and she was so excited to vote for me. She was a high school student, class of 2020. And she couldn't vote for me because she wasn't a registered Democrat. She was registered independent, and she didn't even know. This whole time she was doing the work. She was out volunteering, campaigning, but she didn't know that she wasn't able. So there's different rules that we definitely have to make each other aware of. The young people coming up, the people coming out of jail, definitely always aren't aware. When we go to the DMV, that's something that we got to let people know. I should have made a slide about it. One thing that is great about this year, 2022, we are going to have early in-person voting. So that's something that you got to let people know too. 10 days before the election day, you're going to be able to go in person to the polling places, and you're going to be able to vote. This slide here, I think is poignant. You know, when we go to the ballot, we go behind the curtain and we cast our votes for somebody to represent us who isn't going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. You know, there was one perfect person who some of us believe in, and that perfect person was our incarcerated brother, Jesus Christ. And we strive and we do everything that it is that we can, but we're still not forgiven always. Somebody said when they thought about the word felon, they thought about second chances. That was the first thing that they thought about. I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to take questions from everybody else. The tearing of the temple curtain that separated the common worshiper from the Holy of Holies gave the message that after Jesus Christ, all people have access to democracy and a good life. It was this understanding of scripture that the founding fathers and mothers of the USA applied to all citizens of the new nation. If everyone was equal before God, then everyone should and would be equal before the law. If all are equal before the law, that means all have equal opportunity to live and thrive. Unfortunately, in 1788, when our Constitution was approved, all people referred only to white men. Women and people of color were excluded. I thank God that has changed, and today all citizens are quote unquote officially equal before the law. Everyone deserves the opportunity to make a difference by voting. Is that the last slide? No, we have one more slide, I think. So we have to educate people on this information, what it is that we've learned today. We have to let everyone we know, people that have been convicted of felonies, people that have friends and family that have been convicted that don't know, people that we know are in agreement with us, that people that are locked up and people that are coming out of jail, no matter who they are, no matter what they did, they've had time to reflect, and they should have this opportunity just like everybody else. Nobody's perfect. We have to advocate for legislation that is fair, that does what we want for legislation to do and to make all people whole. So contact your legislators to encourage them to support laws that expand voting rights, and activate all people that you know that you come in contact with. Get trained to be able to register others like me and Mr. Dennis. Get trained to vote. Registrar training second Wednesday of every month with the Department of Elections, and volunteer at registration events and the polls, and make sure that you keep a lookout on election day, because there's still a lot of stuff that's done that is not legal that we gotta be vigilant about. Is that your hand up still, Mr. Dennis? Somebody's hand's up, I see. I want to allow for anyone who has a question to ask the question, and I want to try to answer it. How much time do we have?
I have a question.
Yes, Miss Judy.
Do people get some sort of paperwork saying they've finished their sentence, or like how is that proved, or how is it denied, like that somebody could vote? do you know how that process goes?
Things are on computers now. Your record is something that follows you wherever it is that you go. It's something that is really I don't want to call it advanced, but if you do a background check when you're getting a job or when you're going to live somewhere and they do a background check, it's all in the system. It's all in the computers. But elections has that information as well. So right now, people that have committed some kind of serious crime like murder, rape, or abusing public office, people that have committed bribery and they got caught and charged for it, those people are the only people that have finished their sentence that should be not permitted to vote. But still, there's other people that don't know that, they're not aware of that, so they don't think that they can vote. But if you've served your time and you haven't committed one of those crimes, you can vote. And that's something that a lot of folks aren't aware of still. And it's been this way since 2016.
Do you have a little like blurb, just a brief thing, like if I wanted to post it on my neighborhood website or like email list for people?
I do, and I can get that to you. I do. I think that this information should be on billboards. I think that it should be on commercials. I think that it should be everywhere. And that's why I had the meeting with elections. So I'm glad that you have that in mind, to share that in your neighborhood and on your website. Do we have any other questions?
I do. I have a question. Mr. Hall, first of all, I want to commend you for this wonderful presentation and the information that you shared. I think it's just amazing, the facts that you share with us. My question is, are you aware of any type of orientation program that people go through once they are finishing their sentencing and they're getting acclimated back into society? Is there some type of orientation where they could include this information about voting, and that way, as they go back into society, as they get back into the real world, so to speak, they would have that information? Are you aware of anything like that?
It's very important information. So there should be many organizations like that. I think every organization that deals with people re-entering society should be sharing this information with people.
You see?
Who was that asked that question?
This is Dr. Philman.
Dr. Philman, yes.
So are you saying, as far as you know, the institutions in Delaware that are considered, incarcerated institutions, they don't have the just a basic transitional type of program as people are coming out of the incarcerated situation? It's not just a standard thing that's set up right now?
It should be.
Yes, I agree. I think it should be also. Okay.
We have a lot of time still, right?
Yeah, and I think there was another question.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, from Cindy. Cindy, did you want to come off mute and ask your question, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, it was just somewhat connected to what Dr. Philman was saying about when incarcerated individuals are released, like there's got to be some sort of like packet of information, like, okay, you need to meet with your parole officer, you need to do this. Can we petition DOC to include Department of Corrections, like that type of voting information and like what their rights are? And same thing with like posters in parole offices, community centers, like wherever incarcerated individuals will end up having to spend time. We know they have to check in with parole officers at times. So just wondering if that's been looked at.
Who was that ask that question?
Cindy.
Cindy?
Hi.
I like petitioning, Cindy. So I definitely believe that petitioning is a great way. That's our First Amendment right to petition. And we can also legislate, and we can contact these different offices. We can make sure that we have the change that we want to see. We need to demand it. The folks that are coming out of jail need to know, and however it is that we make that happen, we need to do it. So I'm with you. Yeah, a petition. You can write one on change.com, and I'll put my name on it right now.
Yeah. And there's like Second Chances Farms, like just different organizations that are already working with incarcerated individuals. So maybe just being able to send.
I see Javon she put something in the chat. I saw it went away though.
Yeah, last year, Maryland passed, I think, did they pass this law? You know what? I don't even know if it was passed, but so y'all gonna have to follow up on that. But it was introduced, and it would require their Department of Corrections to provide voter registration application to people, as well as informing people of their voting rights once they're able to be restored. And so in Delaware, I think you said you also talked about the once you finish your probation system. So someone said before, their probation or parole officer would be able to educate them. And a few years ago, I actually talked to someone about this. That I asked someone who worked in the IADAP department of probation and parole, which is supposed to help people further with their transition back or return back home, and they didn't even know what the eligibility requirements were to vote, and this was after 2016. So there are probation officers who don't even know the voting rights of people that they're primarily working with.
So that confusion is the reason why we're advocating for all people to be able to vote, whether you're locked up or not. And this registration situation, we want automatic voter registration. When it's automatic, we don't have these barriers. We don't have this confusion. When everyone can vote, we don't have people thinking that they can't just because they're a felon, because that's how it's been historically. So when we really get change, big change, real change, all that goes away. You don't have those barriers on your brain anymore that keep you as a prisoner. You don't have that chain on your brain.
We could also look at doing like a voter registration drive at something like, I'm not affiliated with them, but something like Second Chances Farm or some sort of organization that already works with individuals. And then maybe that can help kind of spread word of mouth as well, but kind of meet them where they are philosophy.
I think that's a great idea. I think in-person and online voter registrations are needed. And I'm willing to start up the Freedom Fridays again online on Zoom, and we can get people registered online just like we're doing this now. We just let people know where to go, and they get registered online. It's pretty cool. Don Jackson, we need more Don Jackson. We need more people that learn and do what it is that they need to do to be whole. Look at the little baby. That's what it's all about. It's about the future. That's Ms. Farrow. How are you doing? As a matter of fact, that's Aisha Farrow from all the way out there. And where are you from? Tell them where you're at.
Iowa.
All the way out there in Iowa. And tell them how much worse they got it out there in Iowa than we have it here in Delaware, so that we don't feel so bad. We actually are okay. Psych, we ain't okay. But tell them how bad it is. Tell them that statistic that you told me. Aisha's from the Iowa Poor People's Campaign.
The incarceration rate of Iowa, the disparity is super high. So as of right now in Iowa, African Americans make up about 2.5 to 3% of our population, that we represent about 70 to 80% of the incarcerated population. and has to what we were just talking about with people who are incarcerated being notified at the end of their sentences and the end of their probations about when they are eligible to vote and what they need to do. Here in Iowa, I can't think of the name of the group off the top of my head, but we had a couple of nonprofit organizations who put together a voting rights package, and they were hang out outside of the county jail and outside of 2 of our prisons to hand these packets out to people upon their release. And they were arrested for doing that. They weren't allowed to hand out that information. So then they petitioned the Iowa Department of Corrections to give these packets out to individuals who were within a month of being released from their sentences. And that was also overthrown. They weren't allowed to do that either. So we're currently also in a fight trying to get the information out to people who are currently done. And then, after the 2016 law, where you could be able to vote, our governor also passed that as well. That information was kind of silenced in the media, and a lot of people were not aware that their rights were returned or what they needed to do to get their rights back. So we worked with lots of different groups, the Iowa Poor People's Campaign, to get the word out that you are eligible to vote and what you need to do. And it's just as simple as filling out simple paperwork. But as you can see, when you go online to look at the paperwork, it's confusing, different places you have to go back and forth, and it's all meant to discourage people from registering to vote. And the more of these barriers that we can knock down, the more democratic our union can actually be. And if you think about it, the numbers of people who aren't registered to vote is enough to change any election, whether it's local or national. And that's the whole point of these barriers. It's just to keep people from voting. And we'll get there. And Dee, thank you so much for having this forum. And I like hearing what you guys are doing out there in Delaware, because it gives me information to share here, because we like to know what's going on in other states and other ways that we can also take action. And making petition, that's great. I never even thought of that. And the whole
First
thing,
Amendment.
yeah, and the whole thing about registering at the DMV, and that's very, very sneaky about if you don't specify what your party is, marking you as independent, and then taking you out of voting in caucuses. Here in Iowa, we are one of the first states that has the caucuses. And so in order for us to be a battleground state and to really get our numbers out, that's something people need to know. Because a lot of people mark independent only because they want to remain neutral, or they don't know who the different candidates are. And remaining neutral isn't a reason to disqualify yourself from a preliminary vote, such as in the caucuses. So that's something that's very, very sneaky and insidious that people don't even know or think about. And you're always encouraged to apply at the DMV. But if you're applying at the DMV and one of your first chances to vote are disqualified, that's definitely public information that everybody should know. And that's the thing that's so discouraging. A lot of times, the information that everybody should know and should be common knowledge isn't. And that's why I'm so happy there's so many people on here who are willing to get that information out. And like you said, we do need billboards and posters of all this stuff out there.
Would anyone from the Delaware Poor People's Campaign like to say anything? We've got a couple folks from our branch here. Would anyone from the Delaware Poor People's Campaign like to chime in real quick at the end? I don't know how much time we have. Look
2
at
minutes.
the baby. Lynn and Dave, you guys still with us? We do have the elections commissioner on too. Anthony Albans popped on. Lynn said that the Delaware Poor People's Campaign is in support of everything that we're doing. Dave said he's wholeheartedly, and he's with the Delaware Center for Justice as well, Dave Beaver. Mr. Albans, Commissioner Albans, would you like to chime in and say anything?
Just wanted to pop in. I apologize that I had another meeting that ran late. So I wanted to just come in and say hello. And I know Mr. Hall, you know very well. Thank him for being a registrar and for all the good work he does with us. And we appreciate that. And I know and he knows this well. Of course, I have to give him the normal disclaimer. Obviously, our department, we can't advocate for any kind of legislation or anything like that, but just that's out there. But we just want to know that we're there to help anyone who needs any information, any services for voter registration. Mr. Hall, as we all know, is a registrar. He's been through the training. He's very well informed, and we're more than happy to help. Our offices are available. Anytime you can reach us. In person, phone, email, social media, what have you. If you have any questions, we're here to help. We try to make things as simple as possible and try to be a good resource. So thank you all for your interest. And again, Mr. Hall, thanks again for all your dedication.
Can we change that text on the website yet to make it a little bit more readable about the fines and fees?
Well, that's one of those things. There's a lot to get out there. That's the challenge when there's a lot of legal disclaimers we have to be very complete. So there's a lot of info, but we're always looking at ways to try to make it as clear as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff we have to communicate. Yeah, so sometimes there's a lot of text. But if there's ever any questions, we're here to help. You can always reach out to us.
Thank you, Mr. Albans. I'm glad that you showed up.
Absolutely. Sorry, I couldn't get here earlier. I apologize.
Nah, you said you were going to be a little bit late.
No problem.
Does anyone have any questions before we close?
Yes,
Judy,
I have a question. I have a question since Mr. Albans is here. Thank you for being here. Dee's presentation today was, obviously we would like to return the voting right to everyone. But we also talked about people who gained the right to vote in like 2016 and the misinformation. And so with the passage of SB 5 around automatic voter registration, does that bill give you or your office like the ability to make like probation offices automatic voter registration sites or like prison facilities? Does it allow for that?
Its primary focus is the DMV. Of course, that's the primary vehicle. It does talk about there's some possibilities of that, and that hasn't been explored yet because we haven't enacted it yet. We're still in the process of looking at how it can be enacted primarily through the DMV, because there's some number of procedures have to be put in place. It gave it up to a 3-year window for implementation for when it was passed. I don't anticipate it certainly taking that long. We're already working right now, but there is a possibility in there of other agencies being involved. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Javon, follow up.
Huh?
You have a follow up?
No, D. No, D. I don't have another follow-up question, but I know Mr. Yeah, I know Mr. Albans always makes himself available to people for more questions. So I think that response kind of gives us some thoughts about what's possible out there.
Mm-hmm. I did, if you don't mind, just one more comment. I wanted to be sure to mention something. I heard this, and I just wanted to be clear, just make sure it was clear. One of the provisions of that bill with the automatic registration at DMV is, there was some discussion about party affiliation. I heard that mentioned, and of course we know that Delaware is a closed primary state. As we know, Democrats are allowed to vote the Democratic primary, Republicans the Republican primary. That bill, just to clarify, does envision that when people are registered automatically, they are not registered with a party, but they're given an opportunity through a follow-up mail or notification to affiliate with a party if they wish. Now, also, it does have an option for you that the first time you vote, someone who is automatically registered, the first time you would vote in a primary, you would be afforded the opportunity to affiliate with a party at that time if you did not choose to do so. So in other words, you wouldn't be closed out because of lack of a party affiliation. So I just wanted to make that clear that was envisioned in when the bill was drafted in the General Assembly. So that is something that's available. So someone who could have that option on the day of a primary to affiliate with, this Democratic or Republican Party and vote in that primary. Just wanted to make.
And are people educated about if they don't affiliate, how it's going to limit them?
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's not since the bill itself is not, the actual process isn't enacted yet, but when it is, yes, that will be in the information that's sent to individuals, and also promoted, indicating that, yes, you must be affiliated with the party, and here's the opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm.
I want to allow 2 more people to ask questions really quick. 2 more questions. If you have anything that has been burning inside of you to ask.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that, Brother D. First of all, great presentation, man. It's not much a question, but my heart is heavy. My heart is heavy from hearing this information, and I apologize in advance if my remark is kind of disjointed, but I'm feeling conflicted and really a sense of like vicarious despair for our incarcerated and disenfranchised brothers and sisters, because as I'm listening through the presentation and some of the barriers that we're talking about, and some of the things to circumvent those barriers, it feels discouraging, because it seems like we're fighting in multiple ways against a system that is made to reinforce some of the things that we've been talking about. Like that statistic from the sister in Iowa, like, that's crazy. Like, man, 3% of Iowa's population is Black, but 80% of the 3% is incarcerated. So that's like 30 Black people in a state of 1,000, but out of those 30, 24 are in jail and 6 are free. 6 out of 1,000 people. Like, that's crazy. And when I think about what the fight is against, I mean, it just reeks of a double layered wickedness of like racism and the presumption that is placed upon many Black people as being almost genetically or by birth like criminal and deviant, right? That kind of like suspicion or expectation. But then on top of that, the other layer of I was the individual that threw out the word scarlet letter when I was thinking about the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the word felony, because in this country I also feel like there's a layer of like the cultural expectation that like once criminal, always criminal, or like there's no redemption behind that, and that breaks my heart. My father was a corrections officer in New York City for 20 years, and I remember the stories that he told me about the inmates that he would serve, and how dehumanized they were, and how he was one of the few officers that they actually came to respect or love or felt, safe enough to talk to, because the system really wasn't teaching correction as in the name. It was just pure punishment, purely punitive. And even when they got out of jail, it was like that felony was following them like a scarlet letter. So it was like, if you tried to vote, someone was shutting you down. If you tried getting a job, that was shut down, because that would immediately pop up on your record. So I love the individuals that are on this call, and I'm here in heart and in spirit with everyone that came here, that is in agreement and in solidarity with the shoulds of this conversation. These things should be on the billboards and all that. But I think we're kind of like preaching to the choir, and I think that if the masses who believe otherwise were on this call, there would be just as much, if not more, pushback as to why someone with a felony should not ever vote. And that's kind of like the systemic thing that I don't know how to get around. If I'm honest, I think that the answer requires some form of like having buffers or breakers of barriers for every barrier that exists. But what does that mean, or what does that look like? With the example that Aisha gave about people unlawfully getting arrested for trying to pass out pamphlets. It's like, how do we create a system that has a plan C, D, E, F, G for that number of barriers on where that may exist, just for the simple thing of recidivism and equipping people with the access and the opportunity to get a job or to vote. So my heart is heavy. I love the work that is being done, and obviously nothing will change if we all sat on our hands and did nothing. But it's also grim thinking about the big picture and really that we're not really fighting against individuals, but like systems at every level of government.
I appreciate your words, brother Plaskett. I gotta tell you, my uncle, he's been a corrections officer for 40 years. So your dad here in Delaware, I remember he was working down in Smyrna when a corrections officer was killed in a riot, and I thought it was him. I didn't know. I had to call him up. He didn't pick up right away. So I had to call up his daughter. She picked up and she let me know that he got out of there. He was gone. But that kind of work, we love everybody. We care about police officers, and we really care when people are being killed in the street for nothing. People being killed for the rest of their life, they done after they get out of jail. This is assassination. When you tell somebody that they're a felon and they can't work at this place now, they can't live at this place now, it is a fight. We continue to fight. We continue to keep up the good fight. Sister Javon has to go. I don't know how much time we have left. Sister Aisha, he lifted you up a couple times during his comment. Aisha, if you could jump back on, I think we're almost done. But Aisha, she I think the statistic, what did she say? Like 1.3% of the population in Iowa is Black, and 70% of the incarcerated population in Iowa is Black. 70%.
It's actually 3% of the population is Black. And I was just going through to get, I actually quoted, it's actually 78, not 80%. That's the percent that's incarcerated. It's 78% out of a 3% population.
Yeah, that's cool, sis. I was doing mental math. I was rounding like 3% and 80%. It's like 30 out of 1,000 are Black, and 24 out of that 30 are in jail.
Yeah,
Make you want to go to Iowa?
That's crazy.
Does it make you want to go to Iowa and fight, Brother Plastic?
Yeah, and and last summer, our governor passed a law which made protesting illegal out of all the stuff that was happening with George Floyd and protesting going around the country. She made protesting illegal here in Iowa. And now she's, taking eminent domain away from landowners so that she can run carbon pipelines crisscrossing through the state. And, we're a bunch of other stuff with our factory farms. And it really makes one person feel as if they're some kind of commodity and not really a person, when all of these little things are, coming after you and changing the way you can live your life. And, it is an uphill battle that, this is the work of many hands. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And that's why there's so many of us doing it, so we can lift each other up, inspire each other, and keep us going when it gets tough. And it's not going to happen overnight, but Eventually it will happen. And, these kinds of conversations and forums is how that change begins, because everybody here is talking about moving things above the grassroots level. We're talking about changing legislation, writing petitions, changing the actual policies that enact these inequities in our country. And that's how we make the change, making it automatic for voter registration. If voter registration was automatic, can you imagine how many people would be voting, and how those people, how this disenfranchised people, how much that would sweep an election? It would sweep an election. It didn't matter about how they redistricted all the different legislation lines throughout the country. It wouldn't matter one bit. It wouldn't matter one bit. And there's 140 million poor, low-income Americans in this country, and if all of the 140 million voted, that would sway any election, and that's what they're afraid of. And the problem is that all of us who are doing good, we're fragmented in different groups, and we're not always together. But the enemy, they're united in their hate, and they work as one, and that's why so many things are happening with them, going after one thing after another. But more and more that we talk to people and just having conversations with the people all around us can enlighten yourselves and open your eyes. One problem that we have here in Iowa with the Poor People's Campaign is that a lot of people who are poor and low income, they don't identify themselves as being poor or low income. And so the injustices that we're fighting against, they don't always identify with it or feel that it's necessarily their problem, or because here in Iowa, we don't have huge areas where you see, homelessness, or huge areas where you see dilapidated buildings, or huge, government housing projects. We don't have huge areas like that here in Iowa. So people assume that those problems aren't here and those problems don't affect us, but they are there, and they're behind closed doors. It might be an abandoned farmhouse that doesn't have electricity, but there's a family of 8 living there. It might be a slumlord who is renting to some illegal immigrants and not taking care of the property because he knows if they complain, he'll threaten INS on them. Or it might be people working at a meat processing plant and they're not allowed to take bathroom breaks because of fear of retribution from their bosses, or the fact that our water supply is being damaged, but factory farms and all of the water has PPPs and the forever chemicals. If everybody knew about these things, they'd want to act, but they don't know. And so all we can really do is just inform our neighbors, inform our friends, and get the word out, just like old times, and also go on the internet.
Sister Camelia Matthews, I see you on the line. It was Sister Camelia Matthews who connected us to Don Jackson, and we put Don Jackson in the presentation. I don't know if Sister Camelia could come off mute if she hears me or not, but I see her in the chat.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you.
Okay,
You all right?
I'm okay.
Did you see the presentation? You see Mr. Jackson?
I didn't get to see the presentation because I was on Bible study.
I understand. We lifted up a word. We lifted up a good word. Mr. Jackson is going to vote this year, 2022, and
Okay,
we're happy about that.
okay.
So it's 7:15 now. We've been together for over an hour.
Yeah,
Do you want to close out, Kylie? What time is it in Ireland?
it's 12:18 a.m.
12:18 a.m.
It's 6:18.
Wow, we're very far apart in time. Yeah, so definitely after this, I'm gonna be hopping into bed. But this has been a really, really great discussion. I loved hearing everybody's questions and input. And thank you so much, Dee, for your presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
everyone.
Yeah, and also, yes, thank you to everybody who came tonight. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so unless there are any more questions, thank you so much. Have a great evening, and we'll see you at the next one.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Good night.